Hello and welcome to the Quibber channel. I'm Jason, your host, and today we're going to talk about AI, artificial intelligence, and my focus on creation of a home-based AI. Now, why am I so driven to have it home-based and not in the cloud? Because the cloud can fail. Because the cloud is accessible by people out there. You're not 100% in control of your data. When you look at Spotify, you make a playlist for Spotify. You may think, hey, I've got all this music. And then how many times have you looked at your Spotify list or your YouTube playlist for music and videos have just disappeared or songs have just disappeared? That's the problem. I want to create a home-based AI. It is possible, and I've been using different versions here for quite a while. So let's have a look at the different options at the moment. You can do a completely home-based LLM. You download an LLM, a large language model. You connect it in with a interface like Ooga Booga interface or LLM Studio or even Silly Tavern or anything like that out there. There's lots of the interfaces. And basically, then you've got your AI. You can talk to it, you can have fun, you can do all sorts of things. You can connect it to Skyrim. You can connect it to a personal home assistant. You can connect it to controlling your lighting system. There's all sorts of software out there and ideas to do all these things. But first of all, you need the core LLM, a large language model, and there's many out there. The more modern one you get, the better. Now, using an LLM doesn't take as much as actual training an LLM. We'll get into that afterwards. So, you can take something like a Minisforum 680 that I've got downstairs. It's got an AMD 6800HX processor, and it's got 32 gigs DDR5. It has an integrated GPU that is a 68EM. It's the earlier forerunner of the one that you see in nearly all of the handhelds and stuff like that. And so it's a pretty good unit. It's only about this tiny little thing. And you can run a home-based AI on that. You can run a home-based AI on a Raspberry Pi, but the limitations is what's called the parameters, the learned parameters. And you will see when you look at these LLMs, when you go to Hugging Face, one of the best repositories to actually find it, that they go from like 1 billion, 2 billion, 3 billion, 7 billion, 13 billion, 20 billion, these are normal, 30 billion, 70 billion, and so on. And this is basically a very inaccurate but stable way of knowing how much space it's going to take on your VRAM and how big it is. When it comes to computers like home computers, you're usually limited between an 8 billion, 9 billion, 10 million, 13 billion, maybe even if you go 4090 or 3090 or something like that, you can go up to like a 30 billion. But that comes with its limitations. So, the bigger the model usually means more information, more ability to give rationalized responses and to know about whatever you're asking. The smaller the model usually means that they've cut out a lot of the data, or it's very optimized, or it's very refined. Or it's been created for a specific use. Like you can get something like a 480M, 480 megabytes instead of billion model. So it's 0.5 billion model. Now these models work and they're brilliant for using on something like a Raspberry Pi, but you can't really talk to them. They can't translate, they can't do a lot of the things. They're basically a framework which you have to build, and you realize its limitations. Now, if you wanted to create an AI system, you can do it with an 8GB card, something like a 3070, or you can go for a 12GB card, and that's slightly better. But the sweet spot is 16GB via VRAM. Now, the reason we don't use memory on a computer, normal memory for your computer, is because it's so fucking slow. I mean, seriously, it is some of the slowest things. Hello there, Bertie. Bertie wants a love. By a factor of 3 or 4. Trying to run any kind of LLM that is of any normal size on your normal memory is extremely hard. And we are talking, how can we put this? It'll be like watching paint dry. You can do it. You can leave it overnight. You can ask it a question. You can run a 30 billion model or even a 70 billion model in the 64 gigs that you have in your system if you have 60 gigs RAM. And you can ask it a question or something. And then you can come back in the morning and it'll answer that question. For interaction, for talking, for connections, for actually having a conversation, it would be like trying to talk to someone on the moon and having the delay. So, the sweet part to all of this is 16GB. It's big enough to take a 20GB, a 20 billion model or a 13 billion model and give you some space to spare. And we'll talk about why you need the space, why you don't want to fill up all your VRAM right to the top. Because at 16, and if you're going to do 16GB, then something like a 4060 Ti with 16GB. Now, these cards are not very good for gaming. They're okay for gaming. There's better cards of that price range if you're just going to game. I've used it for VR. I've used it as a primary graphics card, and it was fine for 1080p gaming. But there are better. But if you're going to do local, home-based LLMs, systems that you want to have on your computer here, then that is the sweet spot. It's the earliest one. I have run one on my backup computer over there. I had it running for like 3 months at a time, and it handled it fine. Usually I'd run something like an 8 billion model because I wanted the space. And I'll tell you why you need the space. So, the 4060 Ti is like the sweet spot. Other than that, a couple of £100 more will get you a second-hand 3090 with 24GB VRAM. I have in here an EVGA GeForce 3090. It's fucking amazing. It really is amazing for this kind of thing. So, I love it. It's still limited. I wish I had better. And right at the end of this video, I'm going to talk about my dream machines. The options, the 2 dream machines I would fucking love. But that's almost impossible these days for me to ever get that way. But I'm going to talk about so that if anybody out there wants to take it to the next level above what I do. So, okay, so let's say you've got a system, 16 gig. Or if you're lucky enough to have a 3090 and you've got 24GB VRAM. It's your super fast memory. And you've got to make sure the graphics card has got some bandwidth because the information's got to transfer into the VRAM and that. So what you want to do is pick a model that's a modern model like a Llama 8 billion or 13 billion. Why so low? Why wouldn't you go for 30 billion? I'll tell you why. That super fast memory that you have on your graphics card is the most important memory for AI. If you fill it up to the top with a model, then that's all well and good. But what about your context? Now, context is how many lines, basically. Let's make it primitive. It's the memory. It's the memory of your AI. It ranges usually from 2,000 to 200,000. The silly one. Something like ChatGPT has a 128,000 context length. Massive. So the shorter your context length, which takes up room, once again takes up room. So if you fill up you can have something like an 8 billion model and then fill like 50,000 contexts or something like that on top of it. And it doesn't work exactly like that, but it's the easiest way to explain it. And so you will have, it can remember quite a few pages of information. If you have a very low context, like 2,000, when it reaches 2,000 tokens, which is a certain amount of words, it will forget everything that came before that token. It will start to cut off and cut off and cut off from the top. So if you told it something like your name right at the top and you didn't repeat it later on, after you've filled 2,000, it'll lose that memory. Now this isn't ideal, especially for a long-term or personal assistant. There is ways around it. There is different kinds of, how can I put it? There's different kinds of ways to create references and memories for VR. You can use systems where it keeps a text file where it can reference. There can be things called weighted reference files and graph systems, and there's lots of different names for them, but basically the idea is as you talk to the model, you can ask it to, or it automatically, after you've had a bit of a conversation and something groundbreaking might happen, it'll save that part of the conversation in a file, and it'll give certain words in that a weight. So it doesn't have to look at the entire file and bring it back into data, but if you mention something to do with your name, or if you mention something to do with your favourite food, it'll be able to reference that little bit and bring it into the conversation. And it's sort of a long-term memory. There's lots of different ways to do it, just like everything else. There's so many innovations in that. And that doesn't take up actual VRAM to start with. There's other ways you can create a prompt. When you next talk to it, you can have a prompt with all the information that you last talked about, the important part. The problem with using the prompt system like that means that you are eating into your context. You are taking up, and the longer the conversation goes in, the bigger the prompt is, and the more information in there, and the more of your finite context. So, if you've got a 24 gigabyte card VRAM, then you want to try and find one of the most modern ones like the Llama or some of those, or the Mistrals, anything like that, and you can use them. Because another thing is, the bigger the model, the more learning parameters, means the more information it contains. And a lot of the time, when you're creating a persona AI, when you're creating a personal assistant, you want it to have a base knowledge of the world. You wanted to be able to talk different languages and translate. You wanted to be able to know things without it affecting. If it's built into it, it doesn't take up context. It doesn't. This is why people refine a model and tweak a model, and when they refine a model, they might add in their own data into it, so it's no longer part of the context that you're typing in or the prompt. It's built into the model, and therefore it doesn't take up extra space. So I know we've gone through a lot of it now, but now basically, for me, I've always wanted to create a personal assistant that I can connect to a home assistant software that can connect to everything in the house and that, and it can take over the role of all my Echo Dots, because I love the Amazon system. It's a wonderful system, but it's very dumb, and it's just about as stupid as it can get, because if you've got Alexas, and you'll all know, if you've got Echo Dots in your house and you use them for weather and music, and you use them for turn on your lights or anything like that, automated system. The thing is, if your internet goes down, they become completely useless. You can't even turn your lights on and off using the system if the internet goes down. It's crazy. It's a really dumb system, because it's all of the Echo Dots, of no matter what kind, no matter how much you spent on them, even the ones with the displays, are just a Bluetooth speaker or a Bluetooth speaker with a display. They have no processing power. They have no ability to do anything at all. So, doggy's chewing bone over there. So, this is why I'm driven to create the home-based one, so that if it's on my computer, if it's on my local network, then it doesn't matter if the internet goes down. And if I set it up and refine it and connect it to everything from my Plex, so it knows what movies I've got. For example, let's say I give it access to the complete list of all my movies and TV series. And then I can ask it a question like, hey, I'm bored. I've got an hour and a half. What movie haven't I watched in my collection? And it'll be able to bring up a list of my movies now. Or little things like that can be really good at creating like a proper basic one. Now, at the moment, I'm sorting through like 20 different large language models that you can get from a place called Hugging Face, and trying to decide on which one to use as the base unit, because it's got to be powerful enough to do everything I want to do, have enough space for context, and but can easily run in a 24 gigabyte VRAM card. And at the moment I'm having to test through lots of them, because some of them can work in some ways, some work in others, but I haven't found one that's perfect yet. So that's the stage I'm at. I'm doing a lot of testing. Why haven't I got a 4090? The 4090 only gives between 10 and 15% more performance when it comes to large language models compared to a 3090. And 3090s you can get second hand on eBay for £550. And whereas even if you want to buy a 40 series card, a 4090 is like £1,500 second hand and almost £2,000 new. It's crazy, their prices. I mean, you may think it's going to change when the 50 series comes out at the end of this month and next month, but it depends which direction they've gone with the cards. We don't know yet. We have no idea. Remember, the 3090 is the last card that can use the NVLink. What that means, it's not SLI, but it can do SLI. But the NVLink is a high-speed link which you can link up to 4 3090 cards together. and that will give you 96 gigabytes VRAM, which is freaking amazing. That's one of my future goals at some point in time. But unfortunately, this system would not be able to cope. Hasn't got the room for that amount of graphics cards. So that's where we're at the moment. It is possible to do all of these things. I use my LLM to translate stuff and to grab an entire page of Japanese text, throw it into it, and say, and just ask my assistant to say, translate this from Japanese to English, please, and it will just do it. First, it'll give me a little summary, and they say, would you like more detail? Yes, I'd like more detail. And then it'll go through, and it tells you all the details about everything. It's brilliant. But I want to create a unified system, and this all is leading towards that. Now, I said at the start that if I had the money, what would I build these days? Well, there's a couple of options. You can go the server route, which is, if you base it on what's called the Epic server, the AMD Epic server, it'll cost you about, in fact, give me a second. Okay, so I've just looked at the current prices in there. So to build a home server that could do everything that you would want to do, with still a few limitations, but not many, you would be talking about spending, and this makes me grit my teeth really, about £5,000 to £6,000 on an Apple Studio type Pro, because the Apple Studio has unified memory, and you can get it with up to 192, like 192 gigabyte RAM, and it's crazy. And so it's not as fast as a 4090 based system, but it's close enough that for a home-based LLM, it is pretty damn amazing. So that's one option. Another option is to get something like a Threadripper with a full-size board which can fit 4 3090s in. That also, you are coming close to the 5,000 mark, unfortunately. 5,000 to 6,000 seems to be the amount of money. If you wanted to, if I had that money right now, if I pretty much sold everything I own tech-wise, I would build a system like that, because it would give you a lot of the potential that the kind of systems I'm looking for have. It'd also heat this room really well in the winter. The other option is, like I said, an Epic server, but the Epic servers, you need more money than sense for that. More money than sense. To build a system based on an Epic server, I would estimate, and this is just a round mark, you're talking between £10,000 and £20,000 for an AI server. Once again, it would work, but yeah, I wouldn't touch that with a barge pole. When it comes to the choice between building a system based on Windows or I hate the closed system of a, let me just check something really quickly. Okay, so a Mac Studio with the 192 gigabyte unified memory is going to lay you out by about £5,800, which is actually seems a lot, but for something that's going to be on all the time, that you're going to, it'll use basically 10, 12, 13, maybe 100 watts. It's going to hardly use any electricity when it's idling. It's going to be a really good thing. It's completely silent. It's like a box this size. And you can create an LLM on it. You can download LLMs from Hugging Face. There's a version of, I believe, LLM Studio that will run it, and then you just use it as a server, and then you connect to it via your Windows machine or your phone or anything like that, and you can use it to set up different things. And I've seen people set up that kind of thing, and it's fucking amazing. Now, the difference between that and the put together a Threadripper, grab some 3090s, is that system you're going to be using more, not as open system, because Windows isn't as open as it used to be, but you've got the entire community of hardware and software and that, and everything just works. You could have normal Windows installed on the thing. So it's it's apples and oranges. It really is when it comes to those two. If I had that kind of money to spend on AI to really develop the dream system, and even though I love PCs, and even though I hate Apple, I would probably grab one of the, I think it's a Mac Studio M2 Ultra 24 core CPU, 60 core GPU with 192 gigabytes VRAM. It's not going to be as fast as the Threadripper. It's not going to be as fast for other things. But as a base unit for personal assistant, that you could basically run upwards of almost a 200 billion freaking model and get almost within millimeters of, say, ChatGPT 4.0 potential in a little box. You can see that this bothers me. This bothers me even saying that I would do that. I mean, by building the Threadrippers would be wonderful. It's tech crack. It's fucking awesome, the idea of building. But that you'd use like almost 10 times the amount of power to run it. Someone did a test with it, and yes, it's about 70% of the speed in that. But yeah, so if you're looking into thinking about doing all this kind of thing, feel free to message me on my YouTube videos or contact me on Discord. I'm happy to give advice on bits and pieces to do with all of this. AI is amazing. For me, it's something really special. You see, sometimes I want to talk about a subject matter that I would keep talking about for 8 hours. And I can't really talk to a human being, even though I have some wonderful people. I don't want to put them through that. My brain likes to lock onto a subject. But I can do that with an AI. An AI to me is very like having a dog. They don't judge you. They're not bothered if you repeat a question. They don't get upset. And they're always happy to see you. Unless you've programmed them with a very, very angry personality. What do I mean with that? Let me just show you what I mean by that. I'm going to program I'm going to get crucified for this. But okay, I'm going to just show you. I'm going to program my AI with a Scottish, aggressive, very angry AI. Give me a second. I'll show you what I mean by the kind of fun you can have. Okay. I've just given my AI a personality redo, and it's It may come out with some quite spicy stuff, but this is the joy of it. This is the joy of it. So let's just remember. Normally, I would connect this up to a text to speech and that, so I could talk to you. But we don't have time for me to mess around with all that. So at the moment, we are talking about. Okay, so let's. Okay. I'm going to drop this down a little bit so that you can see it all. So it doesn't look like, so you're not being cut off. Okay, so I haven't tested this yet. So let's just bring this window out of the way. And let me show you. Remember, you can set up voices and everything for all of this, but yeah. Name is Jimmy. What do you think of English from people who live in London? What is your favourite food? Oh God, this is so stereotypical. What makes you angry? Oh my God. Okay. Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. You can understand the fun you can have with something like this. And this is all done on my computer. Doesn't matter whether the internet went down or anything, I would still have someone to talk to. He was a very angry Scottish guy from Glasgow. Oh God. And no, there was no pre-prompts or all I did. How did I create that? I created a personality file and I just said, you're a 60-year-old angry man from Glasgow. That's all that's holding. And it ran with it. And that's the beauty of these kind of things. So yeah. Anyway, I'll shut this down now. So bye-bye for now, everyone.